following story that you're going to be listening to, it was sent to me by one of our dear sisters. The confession that she gave to me reads like this. Hello, Brother Nash, how are you? Can you please post my own story as hidden identity? I have my confession that I want to make, but it also involves the confession that was given to me by my own uncle. So in the late 1990s, just before the year 2000, that was when I was informed too. And then there was this other time when I had arrived from school and I saw that there was a letter that had been left behind by my uncle, who was the eldest in the family in which my father was born into, and he had left that note with our maid. So when I arrived from school, the maid then gave me that letter, and I saw that the note said that I was supposed to quickly come to my uncle's house as soon as I would have returned from school. So what my father and my uncle had done is that they had bought their houses in the same suburb. We grew up in the most expensive suburbs in Zim. So at the place where my uncle was staying, you can say that you could just walk for about 2 minutes or so because it was in the same street. So after I had removed my uniform and changed the clothes, I then went to my uncle's house. And when I arrived there was no one but my uncle, who was sitting on the veranda, and he was drinking his traditional beer and busy playing his traditional music. He then invited me into the living room, so I followed him. He offered me the traditional beer, but the way that he was addressing me, he was calling me for the first time using our clan name. This was something that our mother never liked because she was like a Pentecostal woman. So my uncle kept on calling me using those clan names, and I said, but my mom said that we should not do that because those things, they are demonic. My uncle then started to laugh, and my uncle said that there is a story that I want to share with you, and I have chosen you. He said that he wanted to tell me a story. He said, listen here, young girl, you know that in our family, when you have come at an age of somewhere around 25, then all of a sudden you will start to make money. Have you ever asked yourself, why is it in our family when you are around 25, then you just make a lot of money out of nowhere? Then I said, yes, indeed, this is the same story that my mom used to tell us, that when she met our father was just struggling. He was working at this other garage where he was just washing the buses. He didn't have any money at all. And my mother was really worried if he was going to be able to raise the money that was needed for the bride price. But all of a sudden, my father then said that he had been given a contract by GMB, and from that money, that was when he was able to get married to my mother. And then my uncle said, you see, this always happened in your family. It happened to me. It happened to all of your uncles and to your aunties who were my father's sisters, including my father. Then my uncle said, this is not normal at all. Do you know, young lady, that originally we are not Zimbabwean? Then I said to my uncle, no, but my mom said that we come from Masvingo. That is where our bloodline started. Then he laughed at me and he said, let me teach you your own history. He said that my grandfather, who was his father, was the one who had traveled all the way from Malawi, and he had came to Zim. When he came to Zim, he then returned back to Malawi, where he collected our grandmother, and including some of his brothers and his sisters, after he had settled down. So upon leaving Malawi, they were then given these blessings. The uncle said that our relatives who were in Malawi, they used to practice this African religion whereby they would go to the river and they would worship the river spirits. They would be having white rice. Sometimes they would go with a white chicken, sweets, as well as some expensive wine. Then they would pray whilst they would be kneeling by the riverside. So this made the river spirits to bless our family. So these blessings, he said that the blessings, they will follow our bloodline forever, because this is what the river spirits do. We kept on talking, me and my uncle, we kept on talking, and I got interested. And on that same night, when I returned back home, for the first time in my life, I then had a dream, and in my dream, I saw that I was swimming in a river that was very beautiful, and this river, it had clear blue water. And my uncle had told me that if I would ever have a dream, and I should tell him. So the next morning on my way to school, I passed through my uncle's house and I told him the dream that I had, me swimming with this beautiful fish that were of different colors. And my uncle said that, you see, those are your friends, they are the mermaids. So in our family, he said that the mermaids, they always follow those girls that are born into our family, because in the olden days, the girls that were born into our family, they were taught to be sort of like priestesses that would go and offer these gifts to the river spirits, until the day that he got so sick. And when my uncle got so sick, he sat down with me, and this was after one of his daughters, my cousin sister, had passed away. So this cousin sister of mine, the way that she had passed away, it was quite strange. The doctors said that my cousin sister, she had a hole inside her heart, and it was difficult for this to be fixed. So it was a matter of the doctor saying that she had about 4 months to live, and she could not live up to those 4 months. Unfortunately, she then passed away. My uncle called me when he was like really sick. He then gave me this very small clay pot, which he told me that whenever I am troubled by anyone, whenever I feel like angry towards someone who would have wronged me, all that I do is that I take that small clay pot and I go and I throw it in the river. And then I curse the river spirits, like we call them now, Manjuzu, the mermaids. Then I'll curse the mermaids for letting that person to hurt me or to do bad against me. My uncle gave me that small clay pot. My uncle also told me that since there had been a very long time, like generations and generations before, without any sacrifice being done, being given to these water spirits, the water spirits, they were really angry with our family, and they had taken the life of my cousin sister. And he made me to understand that we were the ones that were in the wrong. After, just before he had passed away, my uncle made me to promise him that after he had died, I would go to the river so that I can dedicate his own spirit, so that his spirit can go back into the river and to join up with our ancestors. This is what we used to, this is what our relatives used to do. This is what I was told by my uncle. And after we had buried my uncle, I went to the river alone, holding that clay pot, that very small clay pot, and I placed it on top of the water. And what surprised me is that this clay pot, even though it was as heavy as it was, even though it is very small, I expected it to sink to the bottom of the river, but it started floating. Since this was a flowing river, but it remained still as if it was anchored to the bottom of the river. Then I saw a river spirit, and it is not allowed to describe these river spirits, the mermaids, for if you do so, they can punish you. My brother, I saw this river spirit, a very beautiful one. Then she went back into the water, and I knew that she had accepted my uncle's spirit. I turned back and I returned back home. The dreams continued. I was then told that a sacrifice was needed. I went with a chicken, and when I went there, the river spirits, they were quite angry, because this chicken that I bought, like these river spirits, they do not want these chickens, the broilers. They want those chickens that you can find in the village. So I went into the village and I bought this other white chicken. But I didn't know that when you buy like a chicken that you want to go and sacrifice to these mermaids, they do not want a chicken like if it is white, it is supposed to be white. All the feathers are supposed to be white, no black or brown feathers in between. So when I bought this chicken, I just looked at it and I said, oh, it is white. But I didn't realize that this chicken had a few feathers that were a little bit darker. So I was not supposed to buy such a chicken. Late at night, I then went back to the river. And after I had slaughtered that chicken, and after I had made a small pathway so that the blood can run straight into the river, instead of seeing the friendly river spirit that I had seen before, I saw a hippopotamus that was quite angry. It just came out of the water and looked at me, and it went back, and I knew that something was wrong. I then apologized to the river spirit, and I said, I am nothing but a child that does not know the ways of her ancestors. Please forgive me. Reveal to me. Please tell me, what exactly am I supposed to do? That very same night, that was when I had a dream. I was then taken to where my ancestors are. Such a lovely place. Do you know that this earth, the earth that we think we know, it is not what we think we know, because down there is another world, my brother. Like they say that in science, the earth is like a round ball, but inside the earth, I saw that there is another round ball, and there are people that exist in that world. So when people die, and when you have been following your own African traditional way, you go straight into that world where you will live with your own ancestors. So I was taken into the river, and inside the river there is a place whereby it will be dry ground, and then you will see sort of like a portal, but this was just like a tunnel that I was taken into, and we walked inside that tunnel until finally we had reached the place where two worlds connected. I don't know if I am making any sense at all, but I then found myself in another world where there is a different sky, where there is a different sun, very different from the sun that we know. Different creatures that I saw, my brother. There are even 3 oceans that I saw. The first ocean is the oceans that we know. Then there is another ocean that separates our world, that separates the ocean that belongs to our world. Then there is another ocean that belongs to the world where the dead goes to. When you die following the African tradition, that is where you go. So once you pass through that ocean, the third ocean, then you will see this round ball, and you will know that you are now in another world. Just that some of the things, the spiritual things, they are quite difficult to understand, but that is exactly the thing that I saw. I was taken to the land where I met my ancestors, thanks to them. So they wanted a sacrifice that will come out of my womb. Blood they did not need, but they just wanted my firstborn, who was going to be a girl. That was the sacrifice that they wanted. By the time that I thought about this, all that I had to do was to find a traditional healer, and I explained everything to her. Lucky enough, she knows everything about these marine spirits, and she then took me to the river. We brewed some beer, we danced through the night, and the Mbira songs were played, and it was really nice, my brother. Then early in the morning, that was when we saw a river spirit. She was a very beautiful woman, and she had such long hair. In Africa, there is no woman as beautiful as that woman that we saw. The world, they do not want their image to be revealed to the world. If you do so, they will curse you. If I was allowed to do that, I was going to give you a perfect description of how a mermaid looks like. And after we had seen this mermaid, she went away and she blessed me, and she told me that my womb had been opened up. I should go and lie down with my husband. I returned back home, and I had great joy in my heart. That was when I realized that I had fallen pregnant after I had slept with my husband. When the pregnancy grew, like in those days, there was no way to tell the gender of the baby. So you will just wait until the 9 months, then you will see if the baby was a baby boy or a baby girl. And when the baby came out, I saw that indeed the baby was a baby girl. So without the knowledge of my husband, me and that traditional healer, we then returned back to that river again, where we dedicated my daughter. It was such a nice time, and at the same time I felt nervous. After that, Granny, the old traditional healer, the woman, had told me that I had to strip my baby naked and place her into the water, and she was not going to drown, for the river spirits, they were going to lift her up. I was scared because this was a flowing river. I then removed my baby's clothes, including the nappies, and the water was really cold, but the baby was crying when I was removing the clothes and the nappy. But what surprised me is that the moment that I placed her body into the water, then the baby started laughing as if she was playing with these river spirits. Then she disappeared. When she disappeared, that old traditional healer told me not to cry, not to shed a tear, for if I was going to cry, then my baby was going to be taken forever by these river spirits, because they get angry very quickly. That is what I want people to understand, is that these river spirits, they get angry really quickly. So when you are around them, you need to make sure that you know what you are doing. So I held my tears back. Then my baby was brought up, and I was told by that traditional healer that my daughter had been in the water for about 35 minutes or so. Later on in her life, all the things that she had seen when she was taken into the water, it was going to be revealed to her just before she would have gotten married. Right now, my daughter, she has not yet gotten married, but I know that the river spirits, they know what they are doing. They are still choosing a husband for her, and we are still waiting. But my daughter does not know that this is the responsibility that I placed on her shoulders. One day I am going to sit with my daughter down the same way that my uncle sat with me down when he told me our family's history. I hope that by then she is going to understand. As for now, it worries me a lot, because she thinks that anything that has to do with traditional stuff, it is just demonic. But what she does not understand is that, like my uncle told me, way before these colonizers had came to Africa, we were communicating with God. We were communicating with these spirits that would go and represent us at the throne of God. I know that there are a lot of black people that hate their own cultures, but all that I want to say is that before the colonizers had came, we had our own tradition. Even when we are long gone, our traditions and the spirits of our ancestors will always be roaming around this land of Africa. This thing will never go away. I know that I am not a scientist, but I know what I saw. There is a world that is inside this world that even the scientists cannot even understand. There are 3 oceans that I saw, and just that these scientists, they will never want to attempt to prove if this is wrong or if it is not wrong, because with all the technology, I don't think that they will be able to pass even the first ocean. For you to see the middle ocean, you need to get past the first ocean, but it seems that to us humans, it is not even possible for one to get past the first ocean. This is what I saw, my brother. By the time that I was taken into that earth that is inside this earth, I felt a terrible headache, and I was told that this is because I was taken from one dimension and being brought into another dimension. So this is what made me to have that terrible headache, because of the pressure that my body was taken through. So it makes you to have a very terrible headache. But this happened in the spiritual realm, and it still affected me physically. This is my own story. I know that my confession, it is very confusing, but I hope that people will be able to understand me. Dear listeners, right there was a message that was sent to me by one of our sister right there. Quite a confusing confession, but please let us talk about this confession in the comment section.